Welcome to Painted Porch Strategies and our weekly Stoic lesson, as followed by our Handbook for New Stoics by Massimo Pagliucci and Gregory Lopez. I'm Amy Akowski. I am here with the beautiful Sierra Ram Cantrell, as well as Rob Hunter. We are the Painted Porch team. The always handsome,
the illustrious,
the debonair Rob Hunter. And we are the Painted Porch Strategies team. We are a team that are dedicated to helping individuals and teams find mindfulness, messaging, and connection and communication with teams through Stoic principles. And we base a lot of that on what we continue to learn in our ongoing Stoic practice from this book. This week, we are literally at the halfway point. We are at week 26. And it has been a doozy of a section so far, as we've focused initially on the discipline of desire, and now we've pivoted the last few weeks to the discipline of action. The last few weeks have really helped build up our ability to focus on this next lesson, which is how to turn difficulties into opportunities. What this lesson is really focused on is just that. And Sierra, you talk a lot about this in your course when we talk about obstacles and how obstacles, you can choose to view them as roadblocks or as new pathways that can be drawn. They talk about an example here of just a way to reframe a situation with the example here of Giovanni. And they talk about Giovanni, who recently came out of a tough divorce. And while some of his friends had gone through a similar situation, they all viewed it very differently than the way Giovanni did. You know, they felt that it was a loss, there was pain and bitterness, but Giovanni, he didn't. He talked about and recognized what role he played in the divorce and what he's learned about himself through this process, and then how he can make it better in the future, how he can either avoid a situation like that in the future, or how he can be maybe a more present and attentive partner going forward. And that's really what they want us to focus on here, is how can you take a challenge or something that seems as if it's an unsurmountable obstacle and reframe it by assessing how and in what ways you can turn that lemon into, as we like to say, limoncello, because that's our favorite. Before I continue, any quick thoughts on that?
You know, this is actually perfect timing. We were just talking about on our call before we started, shifted gears to this chapter. We were talking about apologies and how when you give a really good apology, you actually talk about what you learned from it when you say, I'm sorry. So this is very timely. And really, I mean, we often think of becoming a better person that we need these big, huge life events to improve. But really, if you look at every single moment of your day as an opportunity to improve, as to become a better person, more virtuous person, as the Stoics would say, the opportunities are everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. As we like to always include, and each lesson does, because it's Amy's jam, a quote. I'm not going to quote the whole thing, but they use a quote from Seneca. And he uses this analogy of gladiators or athletes in the arena and how they always want and encourage having a worthy opponent, someone who can challenge them. Because if they lower the bar, then they don't feel as if they are really meeting the task of the day. And the last line that he has in this quote is, "It does not matter what you bear, but how you bear it." And that, I think, is a great summary of a lot of what the Stoic philosophy is really focused on. It's not the situation that happens to you, it's how you handle it. It's how you make the best of it and how you approach it from a virtuous and cool-headed perspective.
Because if you think about, most situations are outside of our control anyways.
Mhm.
So what is in our control, it gets back to this, the dichotomy of control is how you handle your emotions about it, what you say about it, what you do about it. That you can control. And I saw this meme recently which said, I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I'm responsible for my second thought and my first action. That is basically what this is. So someone memed up a Stoic principle and got us out there.
Mhm.
And it gets down to premeditatio malorum, which we talked a lot about, which I think are probably the two most foundational Stoic principles that we've learned about going through 26 weeks of this, is this one being, if you plan for bad, I don't know, I don't want to say bad all the time, but if you plan for things to go awry,
Adversity.
yeah, if you plan for adversity ahead of time, you're able to bear it a little bit better than you would have had you not planned. And again, it comes down to preparation. So I think all of these lessons are building off those two main points: premeditatio malorum and the dichotomy of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really almost, looking forward to challenges or adversities or missteps in life, because it's those situations that in the moment may seem impossible to traverse or may seem like this giant boulder that you're trying to move. But once you move that boulder, how amazing do you feel on the other side? Often we can look back and say, you know what, at the moment, in that moment, this thing really sucked, or this thing was really hard, or I didn't think I was going to be able to come out of this. And once I did, man, I'm so much stronger or smarter or more capable or whatever it might be because of that challenge. So welcoming the challenges, and as you're saying, kind of training for those challenges. So that way, when they do come up, you have a little bit more, emotional muscle built up that you can flex.
Now, one of the
Yeah.
challenges I think that comes up is, again, comfort, because we all have a certain comfort level that we like. But when you really think about it, let's say you have a job and you do that job for, back in the day, it used to be like 40 years, right? You'd go to work at 16 years old or 18 or after college or whatever, and you worked until you retired. You give you a gold watch, you say bye. And if you never advance in your career, at some point that job probably gets boring because it's not challenging to you anymore. So you can imagine a scenario where for 20 years, you're not challenged. And you look back and you might go, man, that was pretty boring. That's what I think they're saying here is embrace those challenges, because that's where the fun comes. That's where it's not always fun. Like, hey, this is like going to play on a trampoline or something like that. But you learn more from those challenges and from those adverse moments. That's why you should look forward to them, because they are indeed opportunities for growth, whether it's mentally, whether it's financially, whether it's career wise. There's so many benefits to these things.
I was going to say, though, don't create them.
True.
So it's good to train.
Great point.
It's good to train for them, but don't create them
On purpose.
on purpose
Just
because you like the challenge.
Right.
It's more so just being able to better handle when that comes through. They talk about here is that the most important thing is to learn from your experience, recognize the part that you played in it, and then steer yourselves to do better the next time around. They focus a lot, as you mentioned, on the dichotomy of control. It does no good to, and they quote, lament something that you can no longer change. How many people do you know who have been in a bad relationship or a bad job or got fired or got divorced or whatever it might be, and man, they carry that around with them for years and they
Yep.
never let it go, and they just stew and stew and stew and lament over it.
Like
And
the
really-
guy in Napoleon Dynamite, coach would have put me in. We could have won state.
Yeah.
Don't be Uncle Rico.
Don't be Uncle
Rico.
Don't be Uncle Rico.
Well, I think the Stoics would say that when you keep reliving it, you're making the pain happen twice, 3 times, 4 times. And if you're just constantly replaying, the low light reel, if you will, then you're not leaving space for the highlights and for the next thing. So
And
yeah,
for the
not well.
reflection. Yeah, for the reflection and the lesson in it. If you're focused just on the bitterness or how you were wronged in some way, to their point, it's out of your control. It's already happened. It's in the
Yeah.
past. There's
It's done.
nothing now that can be done to fix what already happened. What you can do is figure out ways to prevent that from happening in the future. And they say, don't add self-inflicted misery, to your point. Don't keep cutting the wound. Don't keep picking the scab when
Yep.
it's trying to heal. Let it heal.
Don't cry for spilled milk.
Well,
It's already spilled.
yeah, exactly. Yep. So,
And I love
oh, go ahead.
continue to say, every ship pilot is good when the waters are calm, but it is the storm that both tests and improves his skills.
Mm-hmm.
This I like underlined 3 times. I'm like, yes, yes.
Yep, because I know you talk about that when it comes to mindfulness. It's easy to be mindful and zen and when it's quiet and calm and you can go in a dark room and be at peace. But really, when you need it is when you know what hits the fan.
But it's that training, we call it winter training, the Stoics call it the same thing, is when you do that training, you're more likely to be able to navigate the sea when it's stormy. So if you meditate in the dark and you're at a quiet place and you do it a lot, you're much more able to do it when it's rocky, when it's light, when it's loud, when you're in the middle of a concert, whatever the case may be.
Right. It as we were doing this lesson, we were talking about some politicians, some people that are in politics, and how a lot of times the message that comes out of that or from other people is, well, I've had a really hard life. It's like, well, of course, it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, you wouldn't be trying to create any type of change. So for people to be like, well, I've had a hard life, congratulations, good for you. That's actually something you kind of, to your point, you want to embrace as opposed to avoid, because without those hard moments, change and growth doesn't happen. I mean, the light bulb wasn't invented just because he was bored. You know what I mean? Like there's necessity is the mother of invention. When you are pushed against something that you want to try to improve on or overcome, that's when the great ideas start to emerge. If you had not, then we would just all be, I don't know, using candles still.
Well, in candle mode. Everybody
Yeah,
be
right. So David Goggins is a former Navy SEAL. I've talked about him before on these videos. I just finished reading his book called Can't Hurt Me. He calls it the cookie jar. So he says, there are going to be moments in your life where you have to push through things, where you get challenged, where you don't want to do it, where you're doubting yourself. You have to reach in that cookie jar and you have to pull out a cookie. And in the metaphorical sense, the cookie is that adversity that you've already been through. Because sometimes you have to remind yourself of all the challenges that you've lived through, that you've done, whether it's working a job to survive, whether it's getting underpaid, whether it's, living through a hurricane, whether it's, whatever the case may be. All those things you think about, he gives you one challenge to basically write down all the things in your cookie jar and pull them out when you need them. All of the strength that you've created, in your life, how he calls it, callous your mind, right? To be able to push yourself when times get tough. That's what they're talking about here. It's really a Stoic principle, and a modern version is, if you go through and you list all of the hardships that you've survived, you might look at it and go, man, I'm pretty tough. Probably a lot tougher mentally than you give yourself credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and they do talk about, in looking at reframing it. So instead of viewing it as, oh man, something else went wrong, is reframing, where's the lesson? Where's the chance for me to gain more virtue, more knowledge? Perhaps figure out a different way to handle this. It's that reframing it so that something that is either an indifferent or a dispreferred suddenly now becomes an opportunity.
Right.
Exactly.
Tony Robbins, who's I'll say a self-improvement
Guru.
I don't
It's
know.
not your guru.
He's not your guru. A self-improvement teacher. He always talks about the idea of a worthy opponent. And he says, a lot of times when you bump up against a person or a situation, that's a cue for you to go, finally, a worthy opponent, someone that is going to challenge me. And that's exactly going back to the athlete analogy that Seneca talks about. It's that idea. You're not going to get better. You're not going to build up that muscle by using a lighter weight. Don't lower the challenge welcome it in. You know, it's kind of like the Matrix, remember, where they're like fighting and he's, yeah, like bring it on. One of the things they talk about when it comes to reframing is the idea of being able to kind of psych yourself up to tackle them, because there's going to be moments where you're going to immediately go to that, oh, this is hard, I don't want to do it, this is poor me, whatever the situation might be, and you go back to your primitive mind as opposed to your now improving enlightened mind. And so they talk about a couple different ways to psych yourself up to tackle them. They say, you know, depending upon you as a person, you may lean more towards one or the other. And they cite having a rational approach or an emotive approach. And really, how can you best tackle these situations and to help psych yourself out? So they talk about when it comes to rational, finding the benefit to the challenge. You know, why will this be good for me? What will I learn from it? And being able to rationally identify that. But then they also talk about the emotive, and that's more of tapping into what speaks to you, I'd say, more within your heart versus your mind, to help you get that emotional energy to move through the obstacle. So my question to you guys is, which one did you find you identified that you connected more with? Was it the rational or the emotive?
Emotive first for me, because that's just how I operate. So I have to go emotion first, then I have to use ration. Because the emotion always comes first, then I have to think about that emotion. What is this emotion telling me? I have to ration that emotion, so to speak. So the emotion is what I'm saying to myself in my head, really, or what my body's saying to my head in a way. Because that's really another way that your mind communicates with you is through emotion. It's like a warning signal, or, oh, you really like this, lean into this. It's your brain telling you something. It's just pausing and giving yourself enough space to translate what that is, that allows you to be, at least me, to become rational. So for example, the things I wrote is premeditatio malorum. We brought that concept. So thinking about the challenges that may lie ahead. And then I said, notice how I'm talking about said challenge in my head. Because that's another huge part of like, okay, what am I saying to myself? Why am I saying myself? And again, go back to the cookie jar, remind myself of all the tough situations that I've already survived. And there are plenty of them. We all have them. And then I go into thinking about flipping the script, so to speak, which is something I talk about in my course. I change the language in my head to get into that rational part of it. So for example, if I think my job is a grind, I'm like, well, but I get to do this. It's the challenge of overcoming the grind to make it interesting every single day that I can do it. And I even came up with a question that I can ask myself every day. What challenge can I tackle today?
Nice.
So you're welcoming it. You're pre-planning for it.
Exactly
I love
right.
that. How about you, Sierra?
Well, not surprising. I also kind of first went to that emotive, because I tend to be a heart thinker first. So I definitely thought about my first reaction, my first gut reaction to the thing I was thinking about as my possible particular challenges is this week we are on our winter break from homeschool. So there's not a whole lot of structure this week. So I was, premeditating that possibly boredom might be a piece of, we're at home. My son is like, is he going to get bored? So I first thought about, okay, oh, he's going to be bored. Oh, he's going to want me to do stuff with him that I'm going to be tired of, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to want to take it easy. And I was like, oh, but then I'm like, you know what? Actually, let's think about this rationally. Boredom is the mother of invention, right? You can often come up with boredom is a great tool for a person, no matter their age, to innovate, to come up with new ideas. And I actually thought this will actually be a great exercise, because if my child comes to me and says, I'm bored, or if I come to myself and say, I'm bored, maybe it's a great time to have a space where there's not a lot happening. Maybe can we embrace that, or can we create something new, or what cool stuff can come out of this boredom. So again, I had to first sort of feel the emotions around it and then embrace the rational, like this could actually be really good. And then I also said for myself, can I expand my patience? I'm sure I could. I'm up for the challenge.
Of course you can. Although you're a very patient person, I'm curious to like how much more patient you can expand.
Monk-like patience. That's what Sierra's goal is, always.
I'm not perfect. I lose my patience just like everybody else.
Especially when I'm bored.
What about you?
So for me, no surprise. If you've been paying attention, I said, rational was my go-to. However, what I realized is that I tend to lean more towards the rational, but sometimes I can get rational fatigue, if you will, where there's only so much rational, logical reasoning I can give to a particular challenge. And I can still say, but I still don't want to. Yes, I know all the benefits. I can lay them out, but I still don't want to do it at this moment. And so because of that, I said, that's when I do need to find some ways to tap into some emotive strategies, because that can then take me sometimes to that next level of I got this. Because so often I can just be, I can wear myself out being rational.
But you need to find a motivating factor. So
yes.
So where Sierra and I have to try to figure out how to get out of the fields, you have to get into the fields to keep you motivated.
Correct.
So I think what they're getting at here is there needs to be some kind of balance, because we all have a go-to. Either it's the emotive reaction or the rational reaction, but you still have to get past that initial reaction and try to motivate yourself and push yourself to run towards the challenge, or at least face the challenge and not back down from it.
So Amy, how do you bring yourself into that heart space? How do you get into that emotive?
I'll let you know. I'm still trying to figure that out. No, truly I am. I haven't quite tapped into the secret sauce there yet. I mean, I think it is situational. It depends on whatever the challenge or circumstance is. Sometimes the way it's almost more of a reset than an emotive deepening, if you will, for me. So sometimes I can get, I get in that rational fatigue where I'm like, yes, I know. These are all the reasons. Yes, I should do this, but I don't want to. And in those instances, it's almost like I need to just step out from the rational thought. And for me, a good way is to just kind of do a shakeout or play some music, right? That can kind of get me out of my head, because sometimes I can rationalize to the point where I'm just like, ugh, forget it. But if I get out of my head, then I can get re-energized and be like, you know what? Yes, all those rational reasons why I need to do it. Yes, the things that telling me no, but I really don't want to. Just shake it off and get back into it. So that's really more so.
Have you ever tried a headstand? I'm serious.
I'll give that a shot. I'll give it a shot. But for me, I think that's kind of phase one. Phase two is finding ways to tap into that emotion and almost have it hang around for a while. Because one of the things that I've practiced in the past, or have had practice with me in the past, is doing the rational breakdown and then trying to step into that feeling. What would that feel like once it's done? How will I feel once I've accomplished it? Blah, blah, blah. And I will experience it, but it's very short term. It's like, it's there for that moment, but then it's gone. It doesn't hang around. So trying to find a way to prolong that emotional connection, so that way it doesn't have to be as big of a task each time of the ration, fatigue, reset. You know what I mean?
Okay. It's interesting because, for Rob and I, it's interesting to hear the opposite side of the spectrum.
That's why we're such a good team.
Yeah.
We're not all the same. We all have our different quirks
Yeah.
and gifts.
Because honestly, I'll tell you, one of the tools that I use when I'm too emotive and I need to get into rational thought, I actually hear Amy's voice in my head.
Oh boy.
Really, I do. I can
What does she say? Is she nice or is she a little?
Oh, she's super nice.
Oh, okay.
She's super nice. It's like I can hear just like a little. It's like an audio clip of your voice, and I can just hear it, and I'm like, okay, Amy would talk me through like the rational steps of this. So you help me even though you don't know you're helping me.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
I'm glad Mini Amy is helping you.
You're like in a little Jiminy Cricket outfit, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Depends on which shoulder she's on.
Wow.
Angel side or devil side?
Rational side.
Rational side. Sometimes both.
Non-cello side.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
Well, that's the question we would have for you is which one do you go to? Because you have the two. So if you have your copy of your book, you can look at chapter 26. If you don't, you're following along because you're curious as to how to best meet challenges. That's it. Figure out, first step would be, are you emotion-based or are you ration-based? And then kind of go from there. And then you can come up with strategies for how to get out of your initial go-to mode and how to push forward. Because challenges are difficult, and we do have a natural tendency, fight or flight. That's what our brain does. Survival, survival, survive. That's our brain's number one job. As Sarah talks about a lot in her radical mindfulness course that we offer you here at Painted Porch Strategies, is just that. It's if you're running away from a saber-tooth tiger or an actual dangerous situation, trust that fight or flight. But often it has nothing to do with you're going to survive or you're going to die. It's often our own head talking us out of any type of discomfort at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And that's what you want to push past, because that's where the growth happens. Again, it's not like you're going to get in a ring and fight off a saber-tooth tiger. We're talking about maybe there's a challenge at work. Maybe there's a challenging person at work who pushes you, who challenges you, who drives you crazy, whatever we want to add to that, that if you figure out how to deal with it and handle it, now you know how to deal with all people like that or more people like that. If you are trying to create a business like we're doing here, there are many challenges that come up. It's certainly not the easy path in life where, but at the same time,
anyone who tells you starting your own business is easy is lying to you.
Well, I don't think anybody actually tells you that. But I think, look at you. I mean, you could have gone on your career path and you could have been fine and you could have made okay money, but you were already kind of done with it because it wasn't challenging you anymore. So now you're stepping out of that and you're challenging yourself to create this, bringing this team together.
Yep, a whole new set of challenges, which are both
Well,
exciting and frustrating and encouraging all at the same time.
And to put it into the same idea of, in exercise physiology, when you want to work out a muscle, let's say you want to build a bicep, you do repetitions of something that is challenging to your bicep muscle. And when you do that, it creates tiny little tears in the muscle fibers. And then in the recovery time that follows, the hours and days that follows, those little tiny tears repair themselves and the muscle becomes stronger. It becomes a stronger muscle. And so if you can think of challenges, deviations, pivots, if you can think of these as little tears in the muscle that will make you stronger, it is literally building a stronger muscle so that you're stronger in the ring. We'll just use that as our analogy there. It makes you a stronger person, both in your muscle, your bicep, as well as your virtue. And like you were talking about the cookie jar, reminding yourself of other times that you became stronger can help boost that emotive sense. It can kind of get you in that state of mind. But turning the script, flipping the script, as you say in your course, Rob, is this is a chance for me to get stronger, bigger muscles, to get better. This is just an exercise in bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise your mind.
Yep, stoic bodybuilding. That's what we're doing here on the porch.
Getting ripped.
Getting ripped.
Yeah, I like that. Get your mind ripped.
Get your mind ripped.
Painted Porch Strategies.
So we would love to hear from you what techniques, whether rational, emotive, combination of the two, which techniques you found worked best for you. If you have certain processes, to Sierra's point, me being a process gal, if you have certain processes or activities that you do that you find help you put you in that right state to get psyched up for the challenge, we'd love for you to share them, because as you've seen here, we can all use suggestions. We can all share, and we can all use each other's suggestions to help tap into those ways to approach obstacles as opportunities and welcome challenges to help build up our stoic strength.
Well, as the Stoics also say, we're meant to collaborate,
Mhm.
not beat each other up.
Yep.
So
So we
this
would
is a
love,
chance to do
yes,
that.
exactly. So we would love to collaborate with you, be it here through this channel and subscribing to these Stoic lessons, or through one of our programs that we offer at Painted Porch Strategies. We have a program that is Sierra's that's focused on tapping into your inner power and your emotional resiliency with radical mindfulness. We have Rob, who is centered on helping you eliminate the internal static that you have that's impacting your ability to communicate and get your message out effectively and with clarity. And then we have my program, which is centered on helping you develop extraordinary teams in all areas of your life, finding ways to connect, collaborate, and achieve a greater mission together. So we would love to work with you or see you again soon. Until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Keep working on your stoic muscles here. And next week, we have week 27, where we have the lesson Act the Opposite of Anger.
Why?
Because.
Oh, okay.
Because they said so.
Okay.
So until then, keep practicing. If you haven't gotten the book, get the book. It's really good. It's great. It's simple. Very short lessons. We'd love to have you join us, as I said, either here on via these videos or by joining us in one of our programs on the porch. So until then, be great and do good things. See you soon.